cat lives in our house primarily for the food that we offer him. Because otherwise he's pretty much outside. Well, I don't know about every night. I'm not tracking him with GPS or anything, but it's pretty regular that Max the cat comes in from a night of prowling, and he has been chewed up, scratched. His ear has been not severed, but it sure looked like it a couple of different times. His habits have caught the attention of my least, and I've had a talk with Max. I've tried to explain to him that he needs to stay, and drink water from his own cisterns there within close proximity, but he is a prowler, and he is out and about. But in spite of the fact that I have spoken with him about this, there is nothing save an injury from the night before in a fight with another male. There is nothing that will keep him at my house come 11 o'clock. He has an appointment that he cannot resist. It's called nature when you see it in the animal kingdom. Max does not know that he is propagating for the next generation. He does not think, hey, my actions tonight will bear out consequences where I'm going to be responsible for a litter, and I don't want that. He doesn't think like that. He's just programmed to act in instinct. You and I are not Max. We're not Max. But we have the same capacity as Max. So because we have the same capacity as Max, God puts us under some conditions. 1 Corinthians 7. Isn't this fun? We'll study together. This is good stuff. I have to be brief tonight. So we'll have some other things to say out of this chapter. In the coming quarter, we're going to have a marriage class on Wednesday night. It's going to deal more, I expect, from the standpoint of, how to deal with each other as spouses and learn to love each other, how to deal with your kids and encourage them. I want to deal with some of the ranker side of the technicalities of what God has to say, some of the things that are pertinent about sexual behavior, that kind of thing. So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 7. Now, about matters that you wrote about, it is good for a man not to marry. But since there is so much immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to the wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has this gift and another has that gift. Okay, let's stop right there. Paul says it is good for a man not to marry. Now, he's going to give some explanation to that, and we'll get to that. But suffice it to say, just for our little episode tonight, basically what that sentence would translate to is that you have control over your body. You are not a max. You might be interested in the same things that Max is interested in, but you are not like him. There is a variable that we are governed by: sensibility, responsibility, integrity, character, goodness. All the things that pertain to a person following Jesus Christ are wrapped up in this idea. Verse 2, he says, since there is so much sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife. Well, what does that mean? How should we understand that? Basically, what Paul is saying is this: marriage is the release for the temptation into sexual immorality. It's just so funny, isn't it? God's just so smart. He knows exactly where to put the line, okay? Here's the line I draw. The sexual contact that you are interested in, that your body is interested in, can only happen in a marriage. Therefore, what I want from people that are involved in that behavior is not a max meeting. Fair enough? I want a commitment. I want a relationship. I want something that's established. I want something that's continual, that's reflective of good things, that is congruent for both people. Not a max moment. There is so much immorality, Paul says. I know, I get it. I understand the temptation. I know it's there. I know you're human. I know that your body is wanting to tell you to follow that scent. But God wants you to stay home. God wants you to find a scent that is in close proximity to where you are, and then dwell in that union, in that relationship that God forms. Marriage is the answer of God to the fact that He made you a sexual, desiring being. Marriage is the answer. But you don't get married the second you come out of your mother's womb. You don't get married the second you turn 12. So there is a control factor that is engaged by the people of God to resist the immorality in aim of a marriage. In aim of a marriage. That's what God wants. Each one should have his own wife. Each woman should have her own husband. Listen carefully. You need no further education. It's just a reminder. If you are not married, sexual interaction between you and that person is a violation of God. The only answer for you, if you are not married yet, is patience, abstinence, or marriage. That's it. God does not make concessions. due to longevity of term. He does not change his mind if it's really love. God said, the only way it is not immorality is when it is in the confine of a relationship between a man and his wife. You are not a max. Within that relationship, Paul says, let me have your attention. Within that relationship, a man's body belongs to his wife, and the wife's body belongs to her husband. Isn't that interesting? You flee into a marital relationship to avoid the sexual immorality of the world, but yet, even inside a marriage relationship, if you are withholding from your partner, you are violating what God says. I know, but I don't feel close to him. You are violating what God says. I would feel more like that if she would stop. I know. Inside of a marriage, a man and a woman belong to each other. And if there's not a fluffing of that with some form of regularity, if there is not attentiveness given to that factor, it is a violation of what God said. Don't use sexual contact as a form of punishment to your spouse. It is not of God for you to do that. If you are in a marriage relationship and you are engaging with someone outside of that union, it is also a violation of what God said. You cannot have a wife that does not belong to you. Do you not hear the wise man in Proverbs? I think it's about chapter 7. Remember? We've done this illustration before. A man cannot take coals into his lap and not expect to get burned. It won't happen. I mean, the imagery's adult. You cannot take hot coals into your lap and think, oh, nothing's going to happen to me. And that is the picture of how the wise man paints a relationship with someone other than your spouse. Don't do that. Don't do that. Marriage is honored by God. Now, we're going to talk a lot more about it, but I want to say those particulars. And it's interesting. Sometimes it is within us to think that if there is potential to sin in some way, that potential thing in and of itself may be wrong or may become wrong. It's just not what you find here. There is a potential. Paul says there's a potential to sin sexually. You can do that before you're ever married. You can do that after you're married by withholding, or you can do that after you're married by being with someone who does not belong to you. But it's all not what God desires. So, this is what the writer said in Hebrews, marriage should be honored by all. Listen. And the marriage bed kept pure. It is for two lovers only. And it is only for lovers who are wedded. That's what God wants. Now, we'll try to flesh that out a little bit further and expand some thoughts. But that's the direction that we'll go for a couple of weeks on Sunday night. So study ahead, chapter 7. It's just brilliant stuff. So if tonight you need to respond to this moment and obey the Lord in some way, we'll encourage you to do that as together we stand and sing.